laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Yes, 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 yes. A new episode of CUZZO-OP is about to start right now, and we are so excited that you just tuned in. Tonight, I will be your host. My name is Isaiah. Some know me as Ivy, and I am joined by my cousin,
Willie, also known as Arrow.
Hey, listen, I'm hyped. I'm hyped today, baby. Let me tell you why I'm hyped. I'm hyped because we're about to dive in to Christopher Nolan's latest film. Now, if you took a listen to our earlier episode where we went through the entire Christopher Nolan filmography, you know I'm a big fan. This is my favorite director. And so it's only right that I host tonight's conversation. Right, Willie? Come on, bro.
Yeah, there was no way that this wasn't going to be your episode.
Absolutamente. Now, listen. I don't know what your setup was, bro. I know a little bit about how you saw this movie, but even before we dive into that, listeners, we try our best here at CUZZO-OP to not talk too much about what we are going to have a conversation about before we get together. This moment is going to be super dynamic because there are moments where Willie and I have been tiptoeing around talking about this movie. And I know you have some hot takes. You have some hot takes. I have some hot takes as well. My hot takes are always hotter than yours. I don't know if you agree or not, though.
I don't know if you have hot or hot takes, but I definitely know that you like to push back, even sometimes when you really don't need to. But before we move on, I just want to say, if you're listening on the day or the days following the release of this episode, you may have noticed that 2 episodes dropped simultaneously. We got the Barbie episode and the Oppenheimer episode. These movies dropped at the same time. It was a huge meme on the internet. This is Barbieheimer CUZZO-OP. This is what we're doing. So if you haven't seen Oppenheimer, but for some reason are listening to this, but you have seen Barbie, go listen to the Barbie episode. If you haven't seen either, go watch them. Either way, you can't really lose. It's just more CUZZO-OP.
You know, maybe you're waiting for it to come out on streaming. That's cool, but I just really do recommend, maybe waiting and then listening to these bad boys because we're going to spoil the crap out of it. Tonight, we are diving into every piece of Oppenheimer. We're going to talk sound. We're going to talk score. We're going to talk acting. We're going to talk script, cinematography, themes, and the list goes on and on. Some people, including Nolan himself, saw this one as almost like 3 movies in one, 3 movie types in one. And so I can imagine our conversation tonight will be very good. Willie, listen, man, should I pray or nah? Let's jump in, bro. I think, hot take number 1, I think this is top 3 Nolan. And it's been a month. And I'll be honest, when I first left the film, I did not think this. I said, this is actually, it didn't meet my expectations. But then I let that joint trickle and percolate. And within like a day or two, bro, I realized like I need to see this again and in 70 millimeter. I'm watching it next week. Next week, I'm going to go peep it. Got a ticket. But I have to go back because I feel like the second time watching this movie is going to make it hit even more. That's how I feel about it right now. How are you feeling about Oppenheimer?
Well, you know what? I might agree with you on that one. I got my top 2 are kind of pretty much there. So what Oppenheimer was battling with is The Dark Knight. And I think that this is, of course, personalist, right? Because I think like on a real filmmaking level, this might be his best made movie ever.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think right now it's at 3. It could be 4, depending on how I feel about The Dark Knight sometimes. But, Inception number 1, Prestige 2, and then it could be Oppenheimer, man. It really could be.
I'm with you. I'm in that same pocket too. I mean, this is one of those places where we just agree. Shout out Marcus. Don't know what you're talking about, bro. The Batman 2022. Come on. Anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about. Yo, I just think, yeah. All right. I want to jump right in. Let's just jump right in. Let's start off with the music. Let's start off with the score. And you know what? I also want to put in here same kind of conversation. I want to talk about the practical effects of this movie. Let's talk about the production, the sound, the score, and the practical effects because there is no CGI, my boy. There's no CGI, my boy. It's Nolan, bro. We're talking about a different class of film, bro. I'm sorry. I can't wait to stomp on them boys on Twitter that be like, there was just a bunch of talking. Yo, Logan Paul, I know you think you could fight, but I'll yoke you up if you talk crazy like that ever again, bro. You're an idiot. Nah, let me stop. Go ahead, bro. Talk to me about the sound. Talk to me about the score. What got you in there, bro?
I am locking in my 2024 Oscars pick for music original score to Ludwig Göransson for Oppenheimer. And I'm locking in sound to Oppenheimer. These departments, like, were on $1 million for this movie. Like, Ludwig killed the score to this, and then the sound, like, just to speak on the most suspenseful 2 scenes of the movie, like, they were that because of the sound. And I'm talking about when he's in the little room with all the stomping and the bomb, because they're doing that countdown where it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? And everyone thinks bomb is boom, but nah, bomb was silent, and it was quiet until it wasn't, until that boom booms, and that thing boom. Like, I that's the only way I can explain it. Sound killed this shit, bro. Like, they did their thing, bro. They did their thing.
It was like that. It was like that. And so if you're talking about the bomb wasn't, it's practical effects. You saw some of what Josh Peck was talking about, how he didn't even know that was going to happen. That he didn't know that moment, I guess he had Nolan had rigged the set without the actors knowing that blowback was going to hit. And Josh said it was the most exhilarating thing, that he went home so gassed off the fact that he just got to have that experience. It's sick.
I didn't see that at all, but I felt it in the movie theater. Whatever he felt, I felt like a fraction of that sitting in my seat. So I'm giving it to them. I'm giving sound to them, even if Nolan still does struggle with some of the speaking audio, issues. But I'm giving it to them, bro.
I really want to talk about, I think that it's hard not to talk about themes, because with Nolan, music plays a role in that theme, like we said, right? And I think if you listen to the contrast from the bomb, if you think of the bomb as that battle of Saratoga moment, that turning point moment of the film where Oppenheimer begins to feel guilty. And everything prior to the bomb, he's excited. And this is, we don't talk acting, but Cillian Murphy's ability to have you see this. Cillian goes from being this hopeful and motivated and purposed character, this leader that everybody wants to follow, to becoming this devastated man, and the music hugs that dynamic so heavily. And I know on second watch, when I'm listening to that, I know I'm gonna notice it even more. I didn't even notice it until I reflected on it, bro. But it's I don't think that shift, that gear shift, would have happened without the score being as great as it is.
Listeners, listen, I don't want to alienate you away from our episode, but right now, I really do want you to pause this episode. Go to wherever you listen to music and type in Oppenheimer, can you hear the music? And listen to almost 2 minutes of just soundtrack perfection for a film. That's how I feel about that. I was hearing that song about a week later in my mind still, without even listening to the song again. It was just in my head because of the greatness that it added to this movie. So me saying that I'm locking sound and original score as the Oscar winner next year is all I really want to say about this entire sound topic.
Absolutely. You know what? So we'll leave that sound conversation there, because that's how we feel on that. But still in the area of effects, let's talk visual effects, cinematography. I wanna start with what we all know about. And if you don't know about this, then hopefully it impresses you. In the beginning of the movie, you see a series of kind of just shots of, is it energy? Is it atoms? Is it fire? Is it sparkle? What is it,
Plus it had the banger ass music behind it.
It's the music as well as the effects that pull you into this world, so you feel the wonder of what Oppenheimer feels about physics. He loves this thing. We're getting to see that.
And not only were we able to see it, but I was hearing it, right? And like, I know we are done talking about sound, but like, knowing that it was practical effects, right? I was in awe of what I was looking at. I thought it was beautiful, similar to how Oppenheimer must have felt that it was beautiful to him, what he was seeing. So I heard and saw the music, if that's what I want to call it.
It was beautiful. And we got to pause because it's like Nolan isn't one of those directors where when you watch his films, you're like, oh, well, Nolan did that. It's like Nolan brings the best out of everyone he works with. I feel like that's something that this movie has like 40 A, B, and C list actors in it. There's so many people who are like, I'll hop in for 2 seconds. We see Casey Affleck pop into the film for no more than 5 minutes, and he is the most ominous character in the entire movie. Fire, bro. So it's like Nolan brings this thing out of everyone. The production is not exempt from that concept. Seeing the behind the scenes of how the special effects director was basically like he's always pushing me. Nolan's always pushing me to have to come up with something bigger and something better. Now, in light of that, I gotta give that dude and Nolan their credit because it's like this isn't just a backdrop for a story. This is the story. The effects are part of the story. So it's like we see initial sparkles, things flying around. And by the end, we're not seeing that anymore. We just see fire, bro. we go from something so small that you see physics spoken through what you're seeing in the effects. It's tough, bro. They did such a great job at that. It changes the whole tone. What?
But you know what's even crazier is like, while you're on the concept of tone, earlier in the movie, as I said, those flashes were beautiful to me and they were beautiful to Oppenheimer. By the end of the movie, those flashes are gone. And what are we looking at now? Fire consuming the earth. Terror. I felt the terror, and so did Oppenheimer. Those flashes of beauty have disappeared and turned into something horrific. And it's just the way that it goes throughout the movie from point A to point B is brilliant, dude. It's brilliant. Like, it's fear. It's terrorizing. Like, I'm scared as shit right now.
That's what I'm saying. It became something, it was so beautiful, and now it's eerie. It was exciting and inviting, and then it becomes eerie. And it's just like, come on. It's another dynamic that you can hold. It's a railing you can hold your hand on as you navigate through the way this is written, the narrative and the way it's flowing for this guy. Dude, I loved it. What did you think, as we talk cinematography and that, what do you think about the black and white decision, the fusion-fission decision? What do you think about that?
I love how the black and white showcase perspective, right? Because we know that the color scenes are meant to be from the perspective of Oppenheimer, right? While the black and white scenes are meant to be from Robert Downey Jr.'s Louis Strauss view, right? So whenever the scene was black and white, I knew what perspective I was supposed to be viewing the scene from. I was like, okay, this is how this person pictures this going. This is whose story we're following right now. And as soon as those same scenes switched to color, I was like, okay, we're in a different perspective. We're in a different mind now. And I just thought that it was brilliant. I really did enjoy it.
Me too. And something that jumped off the screen for me was he put fusion and fission there, which, I mean, Nolan has done this a couple times in some other films, but for the most part, he doesn't like to over-explain himself. And we've talked about this in our Nolan episode. Again, a little humble shout out to our Nolan episode where we talk about his trust of the audience, trusting you enough to tell you an abstract story. Sometimes he does it too much, like in Interstellar. Sometimes he doesn't do it enough, like Tenet. And I think what's cool about this movie is that the black and white notion I heard was something that wasn't in some of the earlier cuts of the film. I heard that after testing, after putting it on the screen for others, that there wasn't enough clarity to the viewers, the separation between the story. And then Nolan came up with this idea. And I have a lot of respect for that because Nolan, you would think he's like, I do it like this, you're going to suck it up. But it's like to learn and then to come up with the creative decision after the fact, if that is true, is dope. I love that he was able to do that. And it just shows that his writing and his story from to begin with. And I know this is based off a true story, but I'm talking about pacing. I'm talking about the way he's telling the tale, the whole narrative all together. It can hold this in the beginning. So I know I built that up, but all that to say, I like the black and white and I like the fission and the fusion. Now, do you remember which one was fission and which one was fusion?
Yeah, fission was Oppenheimer and fusion was Strauss.
Right. And the reason why is because obviously we know fusion is when two things come together. Fission is when two things come apart, when things come apart. So we watch Oppenheimer fall apart as a man within the colorful, abstract, and notice a lot of his characters are his peers, people who see the beauty the same way that he does. But in the black and white of Strauss's view, we see fusion, where he's trying to, one, come up with something to get his career to progress, to make something of himself. But on top of that, he also is an atom. And so is Oppenheimer. And the two clash. They come together and they explode. There is a contrast. Explosions that happen in Oppenheimer's life are obviously quite sad. It looks like it's going in Strauss's direction in a good way for him. But at the end, we see that that doesn't happen. It's a great concept, fusion and fission. I loved that. And it just provides another different way to watch it. But yo, I mean, we're talking Strauss. I know we usually separate acting as another pillar, but can we talk some Oppie and some Strauss real quick? Can we talk some Cillian and some RDJ? Like, what's up, bro? Talk about your Oscar predictions now.
Now, I'm not ready to lock in any choices for actors or actresses when it comes to acting awards. I've got to give everybody in the category their fair shot. However, Murphy and Downey will both be nominated for their roles in this movie for Best Lead Actor and Best Supporting Actor. They killed their roles here. Like, there's nothing else to say. Like, when Downey says that this is his best movie that he's ever been in and his best performance, I believe it. MCU fanboys that are crying saying, but you did 12 years of Tony Stark and you were great in this and this and this. Okay, yeah, he was great. But he feels like he delivered something special here. And it's visible on the screen. Like, he played the same character for years very well, yes, but this was something special to him. And I saw it reflected in his acting. So stop crying. This was special for Downey. I'm excited to have seen him in this movie.
I agree. And I don't think we would have gotten this performance. Now, we forget who RDJ was before Iron Man. I mean, I forget. I'll speak for myself. And it's because he's been doing that consistent role since 2008. I don't care about no Dr. Dolittle. I won't lie. Sherlock Holmes, I rock with Game of Shadows. I rock with that. Yes, but the reality is the first thing you think of is Tony Stark. But yo, I love seeing a different piece. There's an arrogance that exists. We know he's good at those characters, the confident, arrogant characters. I mean, he knows how to play a good broken man. Shout out Iron Man 3. But this movie, bro, I think this is RDJ's best for sure. And I think he's a surefire W. I don't need to see any more movies.
Well, I just want to ensure that I'm being fair to the other actors and actresses in those categories. But I guess I could do that for sound too. But I just want to make sure that it's fair.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. I'll be fair. The fairness is RDJ's a legend. And he showed everyone he's a legend. That's the fairness right there. And I just felt like it wasn't that he stole the show because, again, fusion. It's like it's two concurrent stories, and the beauty and the greatness that he brought to his frustrations with Oppenheimer being in his way. I just think like it wouldn't happen with the contrast of Cillian.
Walking out of the theater and thinking about Robert Downey's character, I thought of Rafe Adler from Uncharted 4, bro. Like, that's who he reminded me of.
That's pretty great. I like that. Uncharted. Let's go.
He's a dude who wanted greatness for himself, but he believed that his greatness was threatened because of Oppenheimer's, the same way Rafe felt like Nathan Drake didn't deserve his greatness and that he did, so he wanted to sabotage him. That's exactly what it felt like. And it's like, dude, Oppenheimer doesn't even give a crap about you. Like, why are you so caught up on this man? Because you feel bothered by what he's been able to achieve when you haven't been able to do shit. Like, you hating on him, but for what? Because he don't hate you.
You hate yourself so much. You're just projecting it on him. You know, and that insecurity of a grown-ass man off the conversation he thinks is about him.
That was such a great moment with his Senate aide, played by my man from Solo. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if they just were speaking about something different, not about you? What if you weren't important enough to be even spoken about? Like, that's exactly what it was. But he was just so caught up on his mind that he couldn't even understand that they were speaking about something completely unrelated to him. And it was beautiful. It made it great. Like, it's not about you, bro. You're not the man.
Look, bro, I just think RDJ, taking it back to that point, I think RDJ put this with the ball. I think that let's stop here. Look, Cillian Murphy is one of those guys, if you watch any of the post-movie or even pre-movie press and what's it called, interviews, there's this one really good interview with all of them there, Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, Cillian, RDJ, and Nolan. And you just see how awkward Cillian Murphy is. He is one of those guys who he loves the craft, but
he just wants to go home.
He just wants to go home. Yeah, he doesn't really. So I want him to win an Oscar just because of that. Just because of that notion. I think he does so much for this movie. I mean, he's the title character for a reason, but he won't get as much love as I think he deserves because of the second half post-bomb part of the movie. I think that like that part of him that just was repressed and very like just heavy, like, yes, you know that the concept is a heavy concept and you're like, I probably feel like that. But I think people are sleeping on the fact that you can see the sadness in this man's eyes, bro.
I don't know, man. He did great in the first half of the movie, but it's the second half that sold me, bro. He was able to sell that feeling that he was just dead inside the entire time after the bomb. Like, I felt that. And, you know, there's a reason why Nolan, after working with Cillian for almost 20 years, like, he said, you're gonna be the main character of this one, and this was it. He sold that feeling that made me feel like shit as I walked out of the theater, because I'm like, damn, that was nuts. Cillian sold that dead feeling, so he deserves all the recognition, and I hope that he gets it, because like I said, he deserves it.
Yeah, he deserves it. I mean, shout out him. I mean, Peaky Blinders. If you haven't realized, that Scarecrow from the Batman series. Like, I mean, this dude's an excellent actor.
He's in Inception and Dunkirk, and he kills those roles there also.
Absolute. And so it would be great to see them both win. I would love that. I would love for Oppenheimer to take the whole game by storm. And that's another question I have for you here. It's like, do you think that this movie is Nolan's attempt to snag his Oscar?
Perhaps. You know, I think that he really set out to craft this as, you know, meticulously as he could. Like, he said, what are the fine details that I need to get right about this movie? I just think he put, you know, his whole foot up in this shit. Like, he put everything into this. And I'm sure he thought, like, this could do some big damage. You know what I'm saying? But I don't necessarily think that, like, he set out to make it that way, but somewhere along the line, he realized, oh yeah, this could be this. Like, this is my big moment, especially falling out with WB. That was huge to him. And so after falling out with WB because of Tenet and the way that was distributed, he came out and he said, like, I need to do something that's going to make it known that I'm still who I am without them. And I'm going to let this movie make sure that people know that I belong among the names of the legend film directors. That's what this is.
Right, because when you watch a movie with agents that can fight in reverse time, or people who jump into a dream, automatically, whether you know it or not, you do limit the amount of people that are going to want to watch your film. That's just the reality. There's a lot of people that will, off the strength of your name. They like action or drama, whatever, but biopic is such an interesting genre for him to have selected. And I think that was the indicator for me. Right from the beginning, I was like, okay, this is going to be one of those poised, like everything on a grand, like sharp, like technically beautiful and sharp movies. And I'm not saying he's not always like that, but you know, Tenet had its quirks. Inception has some quirks. It's tight, but there's some things about it that's like, you know, even a lot, I was just talking to Isa. I was just talking to my sister. If you haven't heard from, you know, Love episode, she jumped on there with us. She was saying that she just watched Interstellar based off us talking. And she doesn't like the ending of Interstellar because the part where he enters into the fifth dimension is just like, what is that? And why it's like very Deus Ex Machina, God's in the machine. You just pulled something out your ass at the end. And she's like, why? And I'm like, see, that's that spectacle. It isn't in this. It isn't in this, though. It's a practical. There's a practical nature to everything in this film. And I just think that practicality is what's going to get him that Oscar, my G.
Yeah, he definitely appealed to a wider audience with this movie compared to some of his other ones, right? So, like, but I don't think it's an Oscar bait movie. I don't think that this is a movie that he set out to create because he knew the people that make decisions at the Oscars would run and suck on all of the, ooh, this is award-worthy type stuff. No, he told a story he wanted to tell damn well. And it just so happens it's going to win an award. Absolutely. Now, my theory with Oppenheimer being all crazy the way it is that because of how good it is, and Nolan's track record with the way he makes movies, the next movie is going to be some berserk Nolan-esque movie. Like, you look at his background, he flip-flops between his grounded stories and his crazy stories. Batman Begins, grounded. Prestige, crazy. Back to Dark Knight, grounded. Then Inception, crazy. Back to The Dark Knight Rises, grounded. Then Interstellar, crazy. Back to Dunkirk, grounded. And it goes on. And now Oppenheimer is that grounded movie. So like I said, my theory is that his next movie is going to be insane. And this was the one he just had to get out there.
I agree. And what you're saying just makes me excited because the legends still make movies. The legendary directors, they still pop out and they still drop in films. Like Killers of the Flower Moon, Scorsese. This man's been making movies for a long time. Nolan is still in the beginning of his legacy. So I'm gassed. This is going to be so sick. I think it is his Oscar jumper. And I know a lot of people who are upset about that. But at the end of the day, I still think it stands out. It's still a unique. I love when the weirdos, he's a very detail-oriented, very like, this is how I want to tell my story. And I think often because of that concept, right, like you said, of Oscar bait, there are people who know how to do all the correct steps and do all what they got to do to get nominated for one of the best movies of the year, or best picture. I just feel like Nolan has circumvented those standards for a while. And he's got nominated. I'm not saying he hasn't, but it's not often. It hasn't happened to every movie.
Now, listen, I know that this is about to be a hot take, but I feel like Nolan is somebody who I would consider a cult director. Like, he has a cult following right now. They're loud as hell, but I still think that they're, like, not a large enough number where people would consider him to be a, like, legendary director. But I think after Oppenheimer, people are going to recognize the name Chris Nolan way more than they do now. They're going to recognize it without the screaming fanboys saying, look, it's Christopher Nolan. You know what I mean? I think that after this, there should be talks about whether or not he can be considered a legendary film director.
Yeah, I think this is his bomb. I really love how meta, layered, and this is the section we got to jump into now, right? Because now we're talking about screenplay, we're talking about narrative, we're talking about the way the movie is written. I think we already said the pieces of production that make a best picture are already A+. The writing in this movie, we've touched on it in different pieces and places, but Willie, what are some pieces of the writing that like just jumped off the screen for you, man? I want to talk about also the stuff people didn't like. I've been on the internet and there's some people who have had problems with the sex scene, have had problems with the bomb scene. let's jump into what were some of your pros and let's break down some cons. I mean, do you have any cons?
Well, I first want to say that the fact that this script was written in the first person perspective is crazy. Like, the script would say things like, I walk over to this side of the room and begin speaking with Jean. And it's like, that's what Cillian follows. But everybody else needed to follow the kind of like, Jean walked towards me. Then Florence had to read that and figure out what she was going to do. But, you know, you're asking about cons. So I'm going to give you the one con that I sucked my teeth at while watching this movie, since you want one, right? At the end of the movie, when Strauss is learning that, you know, there was someone who voted against him, and he's like, who was it? What was his name? And my man Solo goes, a senator who wants to make a name of himself. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy. It felt very cheesy, like the end of The Dark Knight Rises when you realize that Joseph Gordon-Levitt is Robin, kind of. I like your name. You should use it more. Robin. Like, But other than that, I really can't think of anything else. Like, I would have to sit and watch that movie again to really give you an answer. But yeah, that moment, cheesy.
Yeah, that was a little cheesy, a little tokenized. But I mean, JFK, but then I get Gary Oldman as Truman. It balances out.
No, it doesn't balance out because of that.
It balanced out. Nah, let me stop. I'm going down that hill. But look. I want to say this. I want to say that I read a quote. Like I said earlier in the episode, Nolan has come out with a quote in an interview where he says, the film starts as a sort of heroic origin story, if you like, young Oppenheimer. And then in the middle of the film, when it jumps on to the Los Alamos project, it becomes a heist film, really. It's about trying to put a team together to pull off an impossible project. In terms of imagery, I've always thought that part was very much a Western. The last act is a full-on courtroom drama. I've always been fascinated by courtroom dramas. I wanted to make one. So it's like that is a perfect way, right from the horse's mouth, to break down the length of this movie, which is part of what I'm really talking about this for. Like, I know people were like, oh, it's a little long. It's like 3 hours is pretty long. One, it's like Dune was 3 hours too. Any epics are always 3 hours. With this film, having those three and having him say it like that, it does help me even more so understand why he always has the hat on in the heist section. Like, he's got the hat on and he's out there in New Mexico living out his dream. Like, it was definitely a Western vibe. That makes mad sense. But it's like, I get so much from Nolan in these three different interpretations, yet he found a way to balance in the writing the development, and it doesn't feel like it's disjointed. It's so well put together, in my opinion. And I want to talk about the young Oppenheimer section first.
Look, I know that we're starting with the beginning of the movie, so we got to start with the opening caption. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to man. For this, he was chained to a rock and tortured for eternity. Prometheus is Oppenheimer. The movie tells you this right away. And so when we get to look at him in his younger life, we get to see the mistakes and decisions that lead him to where he eventually gets to. Every action that he does at the beginning of this movie comes back around. Poisoning the apple or meeting people at the Communist Party. It all comes back around at some point in time to drag this man down, right? So some people say that the beginning of the movie lost them. It didn't lose me. In fact, I loved it. I thought it was needed.
Absolute, man. And I like that apple that you mentioned, the apple section, because that's a great section too, right? He did a little like wink to the trajectory of this story. You know, he made a decision and then he regretted that decision and then he pulled away that decision before. But he can't do that with what he did with the fire. He can't do that with this bomb that they made. It's already been dropped. It's already killed so many people and it's already changed the world. So it's like, I love how he tips his hat, pun intended, to that kind of notion. And it just you hold on to it. You keep holding on to it. There are other moments where this kind of a feeling happens. And I think that the communist concept is part of that, right? You feel communists are the bad guy in this whole section. I don't necessarily think they did a poor job at that. What I did think that really sold that to me was how open-minded Oppenheimer was as a man. And I think like they wrote really great moments for you to see both sides, where it's like, oh, well, the army wants to pull you in to do this cool thing and you think it's worth being around and you think it's worth, but then it's also like you love these people and you appreciate their mentalities and you appreciate the way you can kind of have a conversation with them that you may not be able to have around some more rigid folk. And you can even see that with the professor right down the hall, right? It's like there's just a stiffness. Everyone knows how that feels, how it feels to go to work, and then how it feels to not have to talk to the people at work, or not have to talk, how it feels to not have to talk to the people that you like spending time with. I just think that they pulled on this very human notion of like feeling different in certain crowds, and he acted that really well. And I want to jump in communist wise into Florence Pugh. I want to talk about that scene. I want to talk about the destroyer of worlds. And a lot of what I've seen on the internet is people feel like that scene wasn't necessary. Oh, well, it wasn't necessary for her to be naked or for us to see them have sex. What's the point in that? Why do we have to see that? And in terms of this 3-segmented kind of concept, I think that's also something that we got to talk about when we look at the sex scene, right?
Look, I know that you've been wanting to talk about this for a while. The only thing that I've seen online is that some people feel like it might have been a little bit disrespectful to have him reading that, secret text. But, Nolan said that it was pivotal, and I honestly feel that way also.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. I think that it's pivotal as well. I think that it's very important. There is a, and this is the subtext. I think a lot of people who felt like this scene was useless or unnecessary, they're missing a subtext that's really important. And I think for the entire movie, I'm not saying that if you don't see the sex scene, you can't see the movie, but there's an honesty, a starkness, a very nakedness to the moments that he had with Florence Pugh's character. And this is, again, a real story. This really happened to a man. He was really in this position. And I think Florence Pugh's character is someone who he was truly intimate with. And for the first real time that we see on screen, and for a very real time in his story, it's like she's special. She's his Lois Lane type.
Look, I didn't mind the sex scene. It's the first time that Nolan has ever put a real sex scene in one of his films, and there's intentionality there. Like, that's what that says to me. This isn't something that he just does. So for Florence, I think it just showcases how important her character is in Oppenheimer's life, but how like deeply connected they were with one another, and how much her character will push forward Oppenheimer as his life goes on. I am willing to hear people out on whether or not that whole sacred text was disrespectful or anything, but I just didn't mind it either.
I also think like it's human, man. You do disrespectful and low key when no one's watching racist things, and you know it. Don't lie. Let's be real. Let's be authentic. This is an authentic moment. So I'm thinking if the script is written in first person, I'm thinking like the concept of her coming and him saying that he's the destroyer of worlds while they're having sex. It's like she's like, own that. She's like, own that you're a mad genius. And he's like, okay, I'll own it. And I would argue that if you've had a relationship, especially in a coming of age time, right? We said young Oppie is the first act according to Nolan. Then it's like, you know what it's like to have somebody in your life that actually helps you believe in your dreams. And that's what this is. That's what this is for Oppenheimer, this relationship. It's a tie. It's a tie for him. So it adds to the grief later on. And we know why, because we saw this intimate moment between them two.
Look, if you even break down the idea of I am death, destroyer of worlds, and you try to connect it to Jean and Oppenheimer's relationship, she is one of the first people whose life gets destroyed because of Oppenheimer. Like, we see that. She dies in the movie by suicide. Maybe, right? Because then there's intentionality, as we were speaking about earlier. There's the scene where she's getting ready to drown herself and she leaves her unsigned suicide note. That's hint number 1, where she puts her head on the water and she's holding herself down to drown herself, right? Because it's a suicide. But then for a split second, we see a black glove who holding her down under the water. And like I said, it's literally a one frame blink and you miss it moment. But what it's doing is it's addressing the real life, like unknown death of this character, of this person, because it is labeled as a suicide, but it's also like, well, the government needed Oppenheimer to do some things during this time, and she was a distraction for him. She was a worry for the government. So could the government have come and killed her? Possibly. And Nolan doesn't answer the question about whether or not it happens because it's an unknown. So he plants that seed in your mind that it's a possibility. Look, I might get killed by the government after this episode. Maybe I'm one of them. I don't know, but I just thought that intentionality behind Nolan showcasing that and how he destroyed her world in some ways was a great thing to do.
Look, everything that Nolan puts on screen when he writes a movie is there because it's supposed to be there. And it's like, if we know that he's going for the Oscar, everything is real practical. All the pieces are there for you to understand, you know? And I think like this being told after we're introduced to Colonel Boris Pash and played by Casey Affleck, who we already said is one of the scariest characters in the movie, if not the scariest. We know he kills communists, that he breaks the law and does things how he thinks it should be handled. So it's like, is it that bad of a doubt or a suspicion on Oppenheimer's part? No, because we as viewers have watched these two concurrent moments. We know the danger of him involving her and meeting with her, and we see them follow him up to her hotel room. So it's like, we got to snuff her out because she could tell about the bomb. That's a very real thing. And Colonel Pash, apparently, he would do something like that.
The world may never know.
I want to talk about the second section, right? Let's talk about the Western. Let's talk about the heist. What did you think about the way that they introduced the scientists? I know some of my friends, when we saw it, we were a little bit lost. If there's any part that felt like it moved very quickly, it was that part. And I understand why. I think if it was too slow, it would have really felt too slow because there is a level of like exposition that happens. But anyways, what did you think? Did you like how people started popping in?
You know, I thought it was perfect, to be honest. I think if it were a little bit faster, it would have been messier. But if it were too slower, it would have slowed down the movie. And the truth is, like, we didn't need to see every single scientist that he spoke to. We didn't need to see all of that because we understand it. We could go read it in a history book, but they showed us what we needed to see to understand that the clock was ticking for America. Things needed to get rolling, and I felt that while watching that scene, so I thought it was perfect. Now, something that people do complain about once they get to the area where they are planning on doing all of this is that they didn't recognize the real life people that were affected by this event. Like, people were pushed out of their homes and they have not been able to return, and those who did stay are like, you have huge side effects from it. And like, I think that this isn't that kind of movie. This isn't the movie that's trying to bring these issues to light. Some could argue that maybe it should have been, but what this movie's purpose was to tell a story from the perspective of Oppenheimer and how everything was from his perspective, which it did. So is it a shame that those things happen in real life to the people who lived in this area that they did all of this work in? Yes, it is. And there are plenty of other places to find that information about it. But I don't fault the movie for not exploring it.
I agree, man. And I think what that starts to talk about is a big thing that when Nolan first was doing interviews right after the movie came out, he was talking a lot about how this is a film of power. It's about having power. We take it back to the Prometheus, the power of the fire in the first place. We kind of get this echo back to Strauss in contrast again of a man who wants power versus someone who innately has it. And it's because of the work he's put in and the influence. It was so cool. One moment that I very much liked was when Oppenheimer hears and sees that Bohr has come in as a holiday gift. And he's like, oh, you can get to work with us. And Bohr's like, nah, you wildin' out. Because he's been in this thing long enough to know how detrimental what's being created is. But he also, and this is what ties us back to young Oppenheimer, is the guy who's even sparked and connected with the spark of Oppenheimer in the first place. So there's this mutual respect for the love of the music. but then at the same time, an understanding of the danger. And then the level I love is also that, like, this is one of his people he looked up to, one of the people he respects, and now he has all the power in the room. He has all of the influence. So now we're seeing the power that's being depicted. And again, Cillian Murphy played the role so perfectly that it's almost like you forget he's acting. You think he's Oppenheimer. You really do. And you're just like, dang, he's in a room with one of his idols, one of his people he looked up to, and now he's surpassing him. He's leading a team towards something amazing in the area of science. As detrimental as it might be, the reality is it's a horrendous spectacle what they're putting on. You know what I mean? And I like that they did that kind of notion of power. Then on Strauss's side, we see more of him trying to take Oppenheimer down. Now we're starting to get an idea. But you know what's cool about that too, bro, is I like that I felt the weight because I know the story. But say you didn't know the story, I don't necessarily think you would know that Oppenheimer was necessarily in a weighty point, even in those black and white scenes with Strauss in the second act of the movie. It's like we know there could be some level of grief, but at the same time, we don't really know the grief until the Trinity test actually happens. Once it happens, from that point to it blowing up to the sound wave, and then that Hiroshima call where he gets he goes into the room and he hears all the people stomping their feet, and then we realize that's the feet we've been hearing in the boardroom.
That's one of them jump scare scenes, bro. Everything about the buildup and the visuals and the sound leading to that was perfect. It was perfect. Like, perfection. 10 out of 10.
So good. It was so good. And I very much like how that was laid and put in contrast. And then let's talk about the bomb real quick. I liked the bomb a lot, man. I liked the bomb a lot. I liked the shot of just the flames that were on the screen, because that's what he's seeing that, bro. As he looks through that little hole in their little bunker, it's like that's what they see. They just see fire, bro.
Look, I know this might be terrible to say, but like I already said, I walked out of the movie feeling like crap. But this scene, watching Oppenheimer's masterpiece, the music that he had been hearing and trying to craft throughout the entire movie, watching this masterpiece go off, it was beautiful. I don't know how to explain it. I was in awe while watching it. It was just something special, honestly.
Yeah, man. It's a really great mix of beauty and danger. You know, victory and loss. You know, they did a great job. Again, horrendous spectacle. I loved how they painted it. They showed it via the different reactions to the people in the crowd. And then the clock's still ticking. And then the way they showed from his perspective, silence, no follow-up. That scene with Matt Damon where he's like, so I'll hear from you soon? And he's like, for what? About what? We just watched them go and commit the craziest heist as they do an impossible mission. And just like that, he's tossed aside. Was it really power? Nolan's giving all these questions, and then he's doubting himself, and then boom, that bomb hits Hiroshima, hits Nagasaki, and we enter into the third section of the movie, the final act.
You know, people online are also upset that we didn't see the bombs drop on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and I don't think we needed to see that, right? Like, I actually think if we did see it, the movie would have been worse. And that might be a hot take. I don't know. I just don't think that the devastation was necessary to see, because we feel it as the movie goes on. We feel the way it weighs down on Oppenheimer. So to the people who feel like it's disrespectful that we didn't get to see it, I ask why? Because we still understand it. We still know it. Like, the movie's goal isn't to bring these issues to light, which again, maybe it should have been, but this story is about Oppenheimer. And, you know, once those bombs dropped, like, he felt some type of way about it, but he never got to actually see it. He was so far removed from seeing it, as were the people that made the decisions. A scary scene in the movie to me was when the general dude was like, don't drop the bomb there. That's where me and my wife had our honeymoon. And people hate that scene. They think it's corny. But to me, it's scary that the people with power to destroy civilizations are so far removed and away from the actual civilizations that they're destroying that they can make a decision like that based on something as small as that. So I don't think that we needed to see the devastation. I'm glad Nolan didn't do it, and I really don't think he had to.
He shows even more of why we don't need to see that, because there's something more important to his story that he's telling. I mean, the movie's called Oppenheimer, that we have to see fall apart and crumble. So, you want to see something crazy. Watch this man fall apart all throughout the third act. He just crumbles, man. He just becomes a dead man walking. And it's so interesting that the scene that he used for the promotion of this movie, which is with the hat on and he's walking in the black and white, and all of the photographers are following him and taking photos. When I first saw that, I thought he was just popular for dropping the bomb, or popular for, but it wasn't just that. It was that, and he was being questioned in terms of whether or not he could be trusted by America. So it's like, it was a great swap. For me, I kind of got like, what's the word? Like when you're playing dodgeball and you get hit with the lobbing drill, someone throws the ball up, you focus on the ball, and then another ball just hits you right in your face. That's what happened to me there. So I'm like, oh, nah, let me tap in, hold up. And then the third act begins, and listen, RDJ, I just can't get over how menacing and conniving and evil RDJ was. But here's also what's cool. He goes from being like a bubbly, talking, politician-ass motherfucker to then they call his bluff. His aide starts to go, but who really put that investigation in order? And it's like, word, who really did? And you see RDJ start to reveal himself as the bad guy. And that moment where he yells at him in the office, well, you know what? And he's just talking about how he doesn't have any power, and Oppenheimer has power, and he doesn't deserve power. I deserve power. That's basically what he's yelling at the top of his lungs, throwing this big tantrum over. Bro, I felt every piece of that scene.
Downey's character says, amateurs chase the sun and get burned. Power stays in the shadows. As soon as he tried to step out of the shadows to chase some of that power, he got burned, which was great. So when Downey possibly wins his Oscar for the scene that we were just speaking about, that end scene, it's because it's glorious, truly. It's fantastic.
Another piece of the writing and the themes that I loved about the third act is, we already said that Oppenheimer's honest self, his friends in this movie, not his colleagues, his friends in this movie, are communists. And it's like the places where he was raw, honest, who he is, felt like he could be seen. We talked about Gene Tadlock. It's like he's shamed for it in this room. And it's the hill he dies on. It's the nail. The places where he had great relationship, those were his friends. They took care of his kid when his wife was drunk out her mind. Those are the people that are the nails in his coffin. He's already down bad, bro. He's already depressed over his actions. And it's just salt in the wound, bro. And he just feels even more. He does such a great job of showing him fall apart and feel even more alone. He's got Kitty there, but he's alone. He doesn't have, even the people who are showing their loyalties, there's some that he was rocking with in the second act that are not rocking with him. And then you see Matt Damon's character that kind of tries to show him some love, but he has to, it's just, you see him picked apart legitimately, emotionally, and literally picked apart. And then I also think that's what makes the Einstein moment even better too. It's someone who understands him. Someone who's like, you're not alone. I felt what you feel right now. Ooh.
The ending to this movie has to be one of my favorite movie endings in like the last 10 years because it felt earned. It felt like they had put all the seeds to make this ending punch you in your freaking chest, bro. Because we seen the perspective of Downey earlier in the movie, of the ending of the movie. Then it disappears for a little bit. Then it comes back with Downey a few times, and then it leaves. But then when it's really time for the movie to end, and you're watching it from Oppenheimer's perspective, you're like, you finally get the reward of knowing what this conversation was that Downey has carried on his shoulder forever. And it's this crazy shit that is earned because of Oppenheimer's journey from young Oppenheimer to now.
Bro, and it's also the way the movie opens. It opens with him staring at a puddle as young Oppie, and now he saw those drops, and those drops were majestic. They were beautiful to him. They were music. And now he can't get that out of his ears as has this ominous ghost that is in his ears and in his eyes and in his mind and in his heart and soul because of what ended up with that all. That all led to atrocity. Dude, the fire. He is chained to a rock for eternity.
It's earned, dude. I'm telling you, from young Oppenheimer looking at the puddle and seeing potential beauty to the end of the movie where older Oppenheimer sees devastation in a puddle, like future devastation, it's earned, dude. From the earlier conversation with Einstein and Oppenheimer talking about the calculations and coming to the conclusion that when they launch that bomb, that there's a near zero chance that they destroy the world, like for it to come back around and have him say like, we destroyed the world with that. Maybe not immediately, but it started a chain reaction that eventually will. It's earned. And the double perspective and keeping it a secret to the end of the movie and all that, it felt earned. It was genius from Nolan, in my opinion.
To be able to do that from two perspectives, to have shown us the final scene within the first 20, 30 minutes of the movie, and then just flip the camera, flip the convo, and that be one of a climactic moments, a conclusive climactic moment. Yo, bro, it's technique, it's poise, it's pacing, it's everything. It's best picture shit, bro.
It's gonna be nominated, bro. The film is just too beautiful.
It's a beautiful film. It's a beautiful film, and I think to end off our conversation tonight, let's just kind of go one by one. Who are some actors that really stood out to you in this, and what do you have to say to them? If they're listening to this podcast right now, what would you tell them that they did a great job about or could have did better?
Cillian, we already spoke about him, bro. He's nominated. Downey, nominated. He's freaking goated. One person that I wasn't feeling until I was, and then everything that I wasn't feeling before, I gained more appreciation for because of the end, was Emily Blunt as Kitty. I know that she doesn't look anything like the person she is portraying, which led me to believe that she had to have been casted because of her acting ability. And yeah, she was. Absolutely. So, Emily Blunt. Now, in our Nolan episode, you asked me, what is one actor that you are excited or hopefully excited to see Nolan work with one day? And I said Rami Malek. And I thought this movie was doing me dirty, yo. Because every time he was on screen, he didn't do anything. And I was like, no, don't tell me he's just a pretty face, the Oscar-winning pretty face. Nah, he wasn't. Because he showed up in the end and he ate his 2 minutes up. Destroyed it. Killed Downey. Like, bam, bam. He did his thing. I freaking loved Rami Malek in this role. I'm incredibly happy that when he showed up, he proved why he has an Oscar under his belt.
Bro, he mustered every piece of his Mr. Robot. Let me take down the powers that be. And he said it with such, it pierced and shot through the scene so loudly that I was like, Strauss is clipped. That boy is shot to death. That boy is gone.
Yo. Up next, someone that I didn't even recognize in the movie until I saw the credits roll, bro. Gary Oldman as Truman. That was a crazy reveal to me. He did his damn thing. He did his thing, bro. I can't hate. He sold me so well that I didn't even know who the actor was, right? That's gotta be a good thing. But up next, we've got my man from Solo. I've spoken about him earlier a little bit, you know. Alden did his thing. Alden had me smiling, especially as the movie went on and he began to be more and more like against Strauss's bullshit. That was fire. Now, what about my man Green Goblin from Amazing Spider-Man 2? Well, how did you feel about him? Because I actually liked him in this compared to Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I mean, Dane DeHaan, I've loved him since he was Apex Predator over in Chronicle with Michael B. Jordan. That boy nice.
He was dope here, man. He was. Anybody that you like?
Seeing Alex Wolff, always great. Love Alex Wolff. Love the Wolff boys. Jason Clarke, just drilling as Roger Robb. was so good and menacing and annoying and frustrating and full of injustice and hate and an agent on a mission and had a agenda. It was great, man. He did great casting on that one.
Look, I could keep going on actors, bro, but the point is, I enjoyed everyone in this movie. Like, I have zero complaints, so I can keep going.
Man. We can keep talking about this movie for forever, bro. I think we could talk and end up here with what you brought up earlier. What's next for Nolan? What the next movie can look like for Nolan? When you think of the fact that he does this fantasy to grounded realness kind of concept, it's like one for you, one for me type of dynamic. This next one's for him, right? So what do you think? Like, do you think, what kind of world do you want to see him jump into?
Bro, I have no idea, but that's just what it makes it Nolan. You have no idea until you sit there and you watch it, and even then you may not know. So that's what I'm there for. Do I want to see him do Star Wars one day? Yes. Would I love to see him do a Western one day or a horror one day? Absolutely. But for whenever it's just Nolan doing Nolan things, my answer will be, I have no idea, and that's the way I like it. So that's how I feel.
Listen, if you live by one of the theaters that's still showing the 70 millimeter tickets, you know what? By the time you hear this, it's too late. Those tickets are gone.
Bro, they've been gone, bro. It's over. If you ain't get them now, you got to just wait for that shit on digital, unfortunately.
This is one of Nolan's best, and I didn't give my top 3 earlier. I did say I agree with you, but just to clarify, man, I think, like Inception's still really up there for me. The Prestige is still such a gritty, great origin movie for Nolan in his lineup. It's just a special film. But I think this is like, it took off the mount Dark Knight for me, and it took Interstellar and told it to sit down. It's a beautiful film. It is multi-layered. It rhymes on some Star Wars shiz. It's beautiful acting, beautiful music, well-paced writing. All of it is beautiful. People like, if you a Logan Paul fanboy, I gotta spin the block. It's just talking. You're not doing enough listening, my bro. And if you listen, you can hear the music in this film. All right, so let me close this up. But before we close up, what's the number rating? What's the rating? What we giving this one, bro?
Off of just my theater experience, no rewatch, which is normally how I like to do things, I gotta give it a 9, bro. I gotta give it a 9. At least a 9, at least. It could be higher than that.
Yeah, I would give it, me, I like my points. I'd say it's a 9.5, 9.7. Somewhere, let's just go a 9.6, And the only reason why I wouldn't give it the rest of the points is because I feel like it's kind of a 10, bro. But it's just like, I got to see it a second time, too. When I see it the second time, we can spin the block and talk about this later on.
Listen, anyone who's listening right now on Letterboxd, try to convince Isaiah to download it, because it's a fun time.
Yeah, that's that app where you can write your reviews, right? Yeah, make sure you tap into Willie's Letterboxd if you just follow us or click our link in our link tree.
Yes, please come follow me. Come check out my Nolan list. I got all of them ranked. I got reviews and ratings for all of Nolan's films, so check it out. I would love to discuss it in the comments on Letterboxd or wherever. It's just a fun time. So hope to see you on there soon, Isaiah.
But hey, we thank you so much for joining us for the 29th episode of CUZZO-OP. Again, if you didn't listen to the first part of our Barbieheimer pack, episode 28, where we jump into Barbie with my sister Jada, please take the time, listen. If you listen to both, we just thank you for supporting us. Listen, CUZZO-OP has a lot of good stuff coming for the rest of the year. We know summer's starting to cool down, but fall's coming, and we're going to be right here. We're going to be talking about Star Wars Rebels as well as Blue Beetle within the next 2 weeks. So make sure you tap into CUZZO-OP, where you will always find 2 cousins, 1 podcast, endless entertainment. Peace.